Ryan Mountcastle, another guy who I think has a decent chance to be traded this offseason, first baseman from the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles have had like way too many position players and not enough space for them for like several years at this point. It really is an embarrassment of riches. And so I think there's a decent chance that Mountcastle could be moved this offseason and a decent chance the Diamondbacks would be interested. If we look at Mountcastle's stats for the 2024 season, these numbers aren't going to blow you away. 271, 308, 425 slash line, 13 homers, 63 RBI, 1.5 wins above replacement. The one thing I'll say about Mountcastle real quick is that he was very much hurt by the Orioles' decision to move their left field fence back, which is a decision they made prior to the 2022 season.
Aren't they doing it again?
Yeah, well, they're moving it forward now and making it lower. In some ways, it'd be very sad if Mountcastle was traded now because he's like, great, just as they moved the fence back in, now I'm headed somewhere else. Yeah. He was very much hurt by that. Right-handed hitters with pull side power, that was about as difficult of a ballpark to hit as any in the league. So you look at his expected stats compared to his actual stats for the last 3 seasons since that adjustment was made. There's a huge difference there. His expected stats are significantly better than the numbers we just showed.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the expected stats are what they are. You also have the fact that he would be playing in a different ballpark here in Arizona.
Right.
I think the thing I like about him is he's 27 years old with 2 years of club control remaining. He was estimated to make $6.6 million in arbitration in 2025, so he should be a lower cost, option potentially.
Yeah, Bohm, I don't think we gave that number for Bohm. Bohm is estimated to make $8.1 million in 2025. So Bohm is just a little bit more expensive, but they're pretty similar, both guys with 2 years of control.
Well, and I mean, there's the idea here is that the Diamondbacks are still looking to solve their problem for first base beyond just next year. And yes, Bohm would do that as well, but I feel like Ryan Mountcastle kind of fits the core of this team that is currently here. He kind of fits the age range of the guys that are here, and he could be just another piece of that core for years to come if the Diamondbacks add him and can, maybe extend him or just have him be part of this team going forward. I mean, right now, his chase rate was 38%, which was in the 4th percentile in 2024.
Yeah,
which isn't great.
That is really, really high. That is really, really high, and it's the reason why he really did not draw walks in 2024 in the way that we're used to seeing.
5.3% walk rate.
Yeah, 5.3% walk rate is really low. That's why his on-base percentage, as we said earlier, was only 308. I do think this could regress back to the middle a little bit. He has not chased this much in years past. He's never been a guy to walk a ton, but 5.3% was his lowest walk rate of his career by a pretty decent margin, especially knowing the Diamondbacks and how much they value guys being patient at the plate. It sort of seems to be a team-wide philosophy, and I wonder if he would maybe embrace that to an extent, or even regardless of what team he's playing for, just sort of make it a goal for himself to chase less in 2025. I think that would be a big benefit to him.
Well, and that's not something that the Diamondbacks weren't great at either last year, right? So,
I mean, they on the whole are pretty decent at that. Guys like Geraldo Perdomo, for example, who work like just ruthless at bats.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks have, I think, a decent reputation in that regard. Even Christian Walker, and this is one of the main distinguishing factors between Mountcastle and Walker. They both have a pretty good amount of power. Like I said earlier, those 13 homers, I think that number goes up maybe significantly if he gets out of that ballpark. The power is there for Mountcastle. However, he doesn't work at bats the way that Christian Walker did. Walker has run an above average walk rate for several years in a row now. Mountcastle is not that guy.
Well, one guy's name is Walker, and one guy's name is Mountcastle, Jesse. As people are pointing out, Mountcastle is an incredible name, and it's worth trading for him
it
alone.
Is. Yeah.
I think it was Rickety Bridge said it first, but he said Mountcastle is such a new I'm not even, I don't feel like we should just say it like that. I feel like we should, say it like, I don't know, like a name on, Killer Instinct video game. She's like, Mountcastle or something crazy like that. Also, 2BMC says, judging by his last name, I presume he comes from a long line of badass medieval knights. So what the hell? Let's do it. they're on board with this one, Jesse. What's it going to cost?
Yeah, and I feel like they're on board with it just because they like the name Mountcastle more than they like the name Bohm, which is fair. I also like the last name Mountcastle more than I would probably like the last name Bohm.
All I'm saying is that sometimes, like as a GM, you go with the numbers, the stats, you go with Fangraphs, you go with WAR. Sometimes you just go with a feeling, and you get a feeling 100%. From a name like Mountcastle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I want a Mountcastle jersey. I haven't seen him play one game as a Diamondback, but it might cost quite a bit.
Yeah. So we have we came up with a mock trade for this once again. Please don't yell at me, any of you, even though I know that you will.
Go off.
So we have Ryan Mountcastle coming to the Diamondbacks again. That's 2 years of club control in exchange for 2 players. You mentioned Alek Thomas earlier. He has 4 years of club control remaining, and the other player here, someone that I think people maybe not so on board with this. Right-handed pitcher Gilbert Diaz, I have as being the other piece in this trade. On paper, I think it's relatively fair. I'm definitely open to what people think. The reality is that Alek Thomas is not. I think he's probably viewed more highly than maybe what his numbers so far in the majors would suggest. But the reality is Alek Thomas has not really proven that he can hit in the big leagues yet.
Yeah.
And the other reality that I would point to here, Gilbert Diaz, like that is a big name to part with in this trade. I acknowledge that. But objectively speaking, I think that Gilbert Diaz there's a fair amount of relief pitcher risk there. Do I think it's sure to happen? Not necessarily. He definitely held his own in those, whatever it was, 4 starts that he made in 2024. But if other teams, I don't think are going to view Gilbert Diaz as a slam dunk starting pitcher for 6 seasons in the majors.
Sure.
There's people are going to perceive some risk there, as they are with Alek Thomas. And if you're getting 2 years of control of a pretty good player in Ryan Mountcastle, it's gonna hurt, right? And I mean that's the other thing I would say is, like, if we showed a mock trade proposal and you as a D-backs fan were like, oh yes, I love this, that probably means that we're not doing our job as analysts and making the trade actually fair for the other team. It's going to hurt to get one of these guys, and understandably that this one that we've presented does as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's got to be fair. And the one thing about guys like Alek Thomas is that he still hasn't proven himself at a major league level. Neither has Gilbert Diaz, besides a handful of starts, right? And even those started to go, or you could say he came back down to earth after a few starts. So again, the benefit there is that that Ryan Mountcastle is a major league first baseman and that he can be that for you as a franchise. Whereas I think you could still be tentative right now. You could be cautiously optimistic for those other 2 guys, but you cannot say that either one of those guys are proven as of this point. So that could be why it works. However, some people are more receptive to this one. There's still some people that hate it.
I do want to talk about the Orioles side of this. Like, why would the Orioles be interested in this trade? I think that's a pretty important factor. Honestly, I don't know that they would. Alek Thomas is, I think, a player that fits their roster in some ways, in that Cedric Mullins is getting a little bit older, and moving him to a corner outfield spot might not be the worst thing at this stage in his career. But he also still had pretty decent defensive metrics in center field in 2024. So they do have a question mark in the long term in center field, but it's not something they necessarily need to address right away. I'm also not totally sure if they would want a left-handed hitting outfielder, because they already have several of those in Mullins, in Heston Kjerstad, and in Colton Cowser. So that would be another factor I'm not so sure about. And then finally, with Gilbert Diaz, as much as I do think he could be an intriguing piece for them, the Orioles are in a win-now mode. And while Diaz did have some success in the majors in 2024, I'm not sure how they would view him. Like would they want Diaz to be their number 5 starter on opening day? I could maybe see a path to that, but I'm not sure that Diaz has proven himself enough for the Orioles to be in on him as of right now. At least, in a trade like this where you're giving away a major league ready piece in Ryan Mountcastle. So I feel better about the Phillies being interested in the Bohm McCarthy deal than I do the Orioles being interested in this one. Again, we're kind of taking a shot in the dark here. I think it's roughly fair. I know RA mentioned earlier that if you run it through the machine at baseball trade values, it says that the Diamondbacks are giving up too much. I don't put a ton of stock in what that website says. It's told me some pretty bizarre things over the years.
How dare you?
But I will say again that I think Mountcastle is kind of a difficult guy to project, just because there's been this disparity between his actual stats and his expected stats for 3 straight years, in large part because of the fence in Baltimore. So I would wonder if maybe the baseball trade values algorithm is undervaluing him a little bit for that reason.